Hello, welcome to another Guns Contractors video. My name is Ollie Guns, and I really need to tell you about quite an important, a very important deadline that is looming on your CSCS cards. Now, this will affect those of us who had CSCS cards, potentially anyway, from before 2010, which is an estimated 60,000 people, and it may well even be more than that. And how it affects us is that if you have a card, as I do, that is what they call an industry accreditation, or was otherwise known as grandfather rights, that card will no longer be valid from December next year. You will probably have found, if you've tried to renew it recently in the last couple of years, that you have a deadline of the end date is December 2024. And even if I was to renew this card now, which runs out in July this year, that would still be the deadline. I wouldn't get 5 years on it. I'll explain why. It's not very complicated, but there's a bit to explain as to why I guess it's the Construction Leadership Council have gone down this route. The CITB and other people they're all on board with this. But it's got significant impact for those of us with those cards. So if you've got a card with grandfather rights, maybe grab a tea, put me on pause, because you join me in my hut and it is tea time. So basically, the cards, if you haven't got an NVQ to support the trade that you are, despite having done it for however many years, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, these people have got, they've done trades. It's an absolute crime, but the reality is your CSCS card, just not anything to do with your safety test, nothing to do with that, will expire and will no longer be valid beyond December next year. And of course, with many sites demanding that you have a CSCS card to get on your site, that potentially puts an end to your career. Regardless of the knowledge, your skills, your experience, your position, this will affect directors of companies, it will affect labourers. Huge implications for the industry at a stupid, ridiculous time where the workforce is diminishing anyways, people retire, we're not getting that many new people coming in to replace them. We have an outrageous demand on the industry as far as infrastructure projects or house building, etc. has maybe this year will be different, but up till now been in incredible demand. There's been a surge in demand for it. So those of us, the regulators who are in charge of our industry, have decided that, and it's no new thing either. It's been on the cards for a long time, and in fairness to them, I think they announced this back in 2015. But I mean, it's a bit like the red diesel thing. They announced that a long time ago as well. It got delayed a couple of times, and people were still shocked when we got to March last year, and suddenly it was, oh, you've got to be on white diesel. Red diesel's gone. So I want to make everyone aware of this, because unlike the diesel thing where you've just got to use your supply and basically pay more for the same gear, this is it's a pay more for the same gear thing. But these things take a few months to put into place, and you could actually find yourself in a position where you now can't work because your CSCS card isn't valid, and that would just be outrageous. And it can take 6 months or more to get your NVQ behind that. So I've done a bit of research on this because this affects me as well. All my plant tickets were done after 2010, and therefore I actually have an NVQ behind them, level 2 NVQ to get your blue card. However, there are people I know, and it was pointed out by a friend of mine last night on the phone discussing this, that his plant tickets, and he has many, not all of which he uses particularly a lot, but he still has them and is trained and authorised to use that plant. They are all on grandfather rights, or the industry accreditation as it's officially known. Now, for him, he is going to have several NVQs because one doesn't cover all of the plant, right? So let's say you had 360 excavator, above and below 10 tonne is all covered under one. You might have a telehandler. Well, that's the second NVQ you would need to do. You might have a dozer, third, dumper, roller, fourth, articulated dump truck. I could name all the categories, but you get my point here. He is in a position where he potentially needs to do nearly 5, I think, NVQs in order to keep the ticket that he currently has. And I have to say, and I don't blame him, he's considering not bothering, because I did some research on just how expensive this is going to be. Now, if you need a level 2 NVQ, you could be a bricklayer, ground worker, you could be a painter, whatever your trade. This affects us all in this industry. That is going to be upwards of £600. That's one quote I've got. You might get it a bit cheaper, they might be more expensive than this, but I got some quotes yesterday just to see where we stand with this and to research for this video. So 600 quid plus VAT, by the way, and of course not everyone runs a business and is VAT registered. People are self-employed, they're not VAT registered. That's all plus VAT prices, I'm sorry to say. So that's to get your NVQ level 2. Well, for me to renew this gold card, my supervisor one, I've had since 2007, I need a level 3 NVQ. Now, level 3 NVQ, £950 plus the VAT, that is. Absolutely ridiculous costs, and of course these costs are set by the people providing the training. Of course, they're going to be competitive to each other, aren't they? But you know, no one's looking to make this a cheap experience, are they? Because it's a good way. You know, you've got 60,000 people potentially that need to go through this. Well, that's an awful lot of money going somewhere, isn't it? And of course, for the people running the cards, it's not a bad thing either, because we'll all need to do our tests again and of course upgrade and renew our cards. Well, there's another 60, 70 quid, isn't it? I think by the time, well, that was the last time I did it. It may well have gone up since then. So you could accuse it of being a money-making scheme. I certainly wouldn't disagree with you on that. But I'll keep it to the facts. If you're looking to do an NVQ, it's a fairly straightforward process, but it's quite involved. I've done a few, as I say, particularly for my plant, and I've done some for other things as well before that. So you don't have to have time off work as such, although it will take up some of your time at work, whilst at work, because you need to build evidence. So what they're looking for is evidence to prove that you are competent at your job, that you follow relevant safety procedures, and that you are sort of the tradesman, you know, that you say you are. Kind of a bit like, do you remember the form that we filled in to get industry accreditation? Kind of a bit like that. I mean, you know, what's different? Oh, wait, this costs 600 quid, whereas that was like whatever part of your application for your card. There's the cynic in me coming out, sorry. But either way, these things, they will take you a minimum of 3 months to do. I think that's as fast as you're going to be able to do it. And it could take well over 6 months. I think I did a level 3 NVQ a few years ago, and that took me, I'm not stupid, but you know, we're in the construction industry for a reason, right? In a way, you know, we all weren't great at school necessarily, but that was just the things they want you to collect. It takes time. It takes time because you can't, if they want something, you know, to prove an element of your work, but that's not what the sort of job you're doing at the moment is. For example, if it was drainage, but you weren't on drainage, you were doing something else, you know, it takes time to get that element, doesn't it? Because you've got to wait for the right job to come along to prove of what you're doing. So that's where it can take time, really. The actual job of collecting information, getting pictures, you know, showing what you do is not actually that onerous, really. Although you do then have to send that on. So this could take some time. December next year is the deadline. We are looking at 6 months, let's say, maybe longer to do the NVQ. So we need to really be thinking about this, you know, early next year. I know that seems like a fair way away, doesn't it? But I think if you haven't enrolled in one by January, the chances are that you could miss your deadline for December. Now, how the industry is going to react to this, I don't know. Of course, if you're a CITB levy payer, then it's not such a drama because all of these costs can be offset with CITB grants. But for those of us who aren't and can't claim the grant back, it's a cost, right? It's expensive. So, excuse me while I get the milk. Yeah, that's where we stand. That is the reality of it. It was well pointed out on LinkedIn, and I'm glad he did, by Mark Anthony of Demolition News. And he raises some very good points about whether the right and the wrongness of this and what you really gain. I'm not going to go too much into the politics of it, and there are a lot really behind it. But the reality is it's coming. I think it's probably really too late to make a big stand on it. But essentially, I mean, there's some quotes here that they're just horrendous, really. I've printed off some stuff, but it can make you quite angry. If you are a person who is maybe coming up to retirement in the next few years, are you really going to be looking to spend thousands of pounds out, and that's how much it's going to be realistically, to keep the ticket that, let's face it, only gets you in the door of the job, doesn't it? If you're no good at your job, you get booted off the job. If you do something stupid and unsafe, you get booted off the job. So the card really, it's a box ticking exercise largely. I think they could be a lot better. There's a huge amount of things you could do with CSCS cards that would make the whole thing needs reforming, really. But anyway, again, won't get too tied up in the politics. Reality is, this is where we stand, and I want to make people aware of that, so they can decide what they're going to do in the future. And it'd be the same, I would imagine, as well for your NPAWS cards, because I've got one of them, and they used to, of course, last for 5 years anyway. Now they've become in line with CSCS. Now it's good because they're accepted on pretty much all sites now as well. There was a period where people wouldn't accept NPAWS. Of course, the bad news is that they're basically on the same bandwagon as such, aren't they? So rather than us having that advantage that we used to have with NPAWS, and it being a little bit more reasonable to achieve, it's basically another name for a CSCS card, basically. So I would have thought it'll be the same for them as well. So do your research, find out if that applies to you. The bit that you're looking for really is on the back. If it says, like mine does, industry accreditation, then you're screwed, basically. I will have to decide where I go with that. Particularly those of us who don't use our cards all the time anymore. They do get asked for occasionally. I think it's good practice to have one overall, but I mean, maybe once or twice a year I get asked for mine. So is it worth £1,000 for me to get a level 3 NVQ to keep a supervisor ticket to supervise largely myself? Maybe not. Because you've got to think, further down the line, you never know where you're going to be in your life, do you? So it was hard for card to get hold of, and may well be longer term worth. But anyway, that's where we are. Sorry to say, I'd normally for this point say I hope you enjoyed the video, but of course there's absolutely nothing enjoyable about this topic, and there's definitely nothing enjoyable about the news that I've just had to break to you. So yeah, I hope it doesn't affect too many of you. As I said, it's mainly for those of us who had a card pre 2010. That's when they stopped doing it. But yeah, it's going to have significant ramifications for the construction industry, and I see a lot of people giving up on site work, particularly on the back of this, because there just won't be any point for them to bother doing it. So further shortening operators doesn't help the industry. Might raise wages though for the rest of us. So every cloud and all that. Anyway. My name's Ollie Guns. You can find me on Instagram. I've got a Facebook page for Guns Contractors as well. I enjoy the interaction with people. Always just looking to further our trade, what we do, and spread good information about. Got a few things coming up this year that are looking quite exciting. A couple of trade shows that I'll be attending in the next few weeks. So look out for videos on those. And I hope to see you in the next video soon. Thank you very much.